Will you two have the screen pulled up tonight? No, that's fine. We just typically, I think the time frame that we stream right now, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's good because we don't have a lot of activity, so we can focus on each other and do the podcast as we normally did. But it does go down quite a bit from a viewership standpoint. And not that I want us to go affiliate, and not about the numbers, but since we hit that milestone on Monday, I just want to try and keep those up while we can. Hey, I take a lot of pride in what we do. We're doing something right. Johnny, are you going to do the intro for us, Johnny? Okay. I'll be throwing up the theme song here in about 15 seconds.
Hello and welcome to The Casual Hour, a podcast ostensibly about video games, but mostly about being a gamer and your heart. I'm your host, Johnny Amizich. Tonight, we're having a special deep dive episode. Joining me, as always, Mr. Bobby Pease. Hello, Bobby.
Yo, yo, yo.
And Mr. Chase Kinnicky, the gamer on the go. Hi, Chase.
It's me. Hi.
Hey, so tonight, hi. Just say hi once.
Okay.
Tonight we're doing a deep dive, and I haven't done one of these in a while. And the reason was I was
do deep dives on the show.
Not believe it or not. Yeah.
Nobody has a chance to get better.
It's true. Yeah. So I was waiting for a book to come out called Ask Iwata.
Yep. Don't show the cover. Just show the spine. Smart.
Yeah. Classic.
Oh wait, you don't have the jacket on?
I took the. I hate reading books with dust jackets on them.
This is what the cover looks like.
This is what the real cover looks like.
Yeah.
So yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about Saturo Iwata, the late great president of Nintendo, and how laboratory programming whiz, all around cool guy. And he is a very special figure in gaming, and I think all of us here have been personally, affected by the games that he worked on and touched throughout his career. And I thought it would be fun to talk about him tonight. So, what we're gonna do, I have a little, basically, like a little essay I wrote, summarizing the first part of his career, leading up to when he became president. I did. Yeah, so leading up to when he becomes president of Nintendo, And then since Chase also read the book, I thought that after that we could have more of a free-form discussion about the book in general.
Oh, I didn't know we were supposed to read the book.
It wasn't required reading. Chase just happened to get the book too.
My high school English teacher would be so impressed. I actually did the reading for once in my goddamn life.
So, and then at the
To
end,
Kill a Mockingbird? No, but I'll read this.
that book is amazing.
It is not amazing. I did not enjoy that book.
Oh, it's just okay. We can talk about how wrong you are later about that.
Okay.
But first, let's say, Bobby, how much do you know about Iwata? Like, how familiar are you with the man, the things that he touched throughout his career?
I'm familiar with who he is. I don't know the deep cuts that I hope we get to learn about tonight.
Okay. Do you know any of the games that he worked on or had a hand in getting shipped out the door?
Most of the early NES games, correct? Like first party into r.i.p.
Golf. Yeah, remember they found a tribute to him on the Switch where they actually had golf buried in the firmware somewhere.
Yep.
He was the programmer on that. But he actually got his start in programming in high school. So when he was in high school, he acquired a programmable calculator.
I also like to ask the person who didn't read the book all the tough questions right out of the get-go.
Well, he assumes that because I did the reading, I know these things.
Just
to gain a base amount of knowledge of what he's got to explain and what he doesn't.
Then he tried to do gotcha journalism. Real clever.
Oh my god. There's a certain level of familiarity, across gaming with him, and I didn't know how well obviously you knew he died, but anyway, moving past that. This is off to a great start.
Do you even know anything? He's dead. Did you learn anything at all? Why are you here?
Bobby, did you know Saturo Iwata, Japanese?
Yeah.
I know.
Son of a bitch!
I thought he was from Frankfurt, Germany.
I told you I don't like anime, Johnny.
Well, strap yourself in. It's called hentai, Bobby, and it's
it's
hard.
You're really
Iwata
rolling over.
Wait, hentai is.
No, we're not talking about hentai during a Saturo Iwata tribute.
Please, no.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, when he's in high school, he acquires a programmable calculator made by HP that his father helped him pay for once he'd saved up half for it. It was the same calculator that the Apollo astronauts used during the Apollo-Soyuz test project. So it's being used by astronauts. So pretty advanced calculator. It didn't come with any instructions or guides for him to go by. So he basically had to figure out how to make this thing work on his own. Eventually he became aware of all the different things he could do on this calculator. And one of the things he started doing was making games. And he would make games in class and he would pass it back and forth with his classmate who sat next to him. And this was his introduction to programming. And that really set him down the path that he would take that would lead him, to becoming president of Nintendo and overseeing the development of the Wii and the DS and all that. Tonight we're going to talk about Iwata, his life, and the lasting legacy that he's left behind on the gaming industry. So I used the book along with some other articles and things that I read as resources for this episode. And it's just like our way of paying a small little homage to one of the more influential people that's ever worked in the industry. I mean,
let's preface this for anybody listening. You will not have to have read the book to, and Bobby, you'll appreciate this. You will not have to have read the book for us to have a meaningful discussion on this. And I kind of want to talk about the book generally before Johnny digs in. It's a nice book in that it is pulling together a lot of nice things, but I don't think it's a great book. It is.
I think it's probably the best that you could do for someone who famously didn't like talking about themselves.
Sure. Yes, and the book itself, the way it's set up, it pulls a lot of articles that he wrote for the Hobonichi Tekko, I forgot his first name. Itoi's company, the creator of Earthbound. He had a blog kind of thing that Iwata would sometimes contribute articles to. And then it also took a few things from the Iwata Asks, and that's where the name of the book comes from as well. The Iwata Asks segment that Nintendo would do occasionally, where Iwata would sit down with developers from a game that just came out from Nintendo and talk to them about, where it came from and any developer challenges. Or it was a really interesting look into the Nintendo development process, which is usually a very walled garden kind of thing. So it was really cool to see even this very manicured segment with a corporate president talking to these people, but still there were some moments of, hey, remember that time back in like 1994 and we did this and that and that, and I was like, oh, that's so cool. I things that you wouldn't necessarily know, and those things would get translated too, so that was pretty neat.
And he coming from a programming background could dig deeper into those conversations than your average corporate president. And that was one of the other things that made them so interesting to watch, is he could communicate on a level that most executives probably were incapable of doing.
So it's mostly like pulling together these different pieces of articles and things that he wrote
and translating them.
And just kind of putting them together into this somewhat of an anthology, I guess. But then it also has some words from both Shigeru Miyamoto and I remembered his other name. It's Shigesato Itoi, because they were both very close to Iwata, and so I feel like those are things that were written for the book, not just pulled from somewhere else.
At the very end, that was my.
Did you know all those things about the book?
What?
Did you know all those things about the book?
He did, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
But because it's kind of an anthology like that, sorry, Johnny, I'll let you go. But because it's like that, I think it's just a really uneven book in that it doesn't have a consistent flow to it. It doesn't tell a full story because it is just pulling these pieces out of things that he wrote and things that he wrote on a wide variety of topics. So a lot of stuff feels relatively surface level or like really minuscule in the little factoids you get as you go through. But even still, I think it's an interesting book. It's got some cool stuff in it, and I think it has some. Go ahead.
It's nice to have all this stuff in a language that we can read.
That's very true. Yeah. A lot of these articles that he wrote were only in Japanese. The Iwata Ask stuff would come over, but not these. These other ones. But I think it also has some interesting philosophy kind of stuff in there. His philosophy on programming, his philosophy on being a president and corporate culture. I thought it was really interesting the way he talks about interviewing people and doing twice yearly interviews with everybody in the company, or at least, at one point where he was still able to manage talking to everybody in a single company.
Yeah, how he started that. That was, he had a very unique approach to leadership, and it seemed like he genuinely was cared about and was invested in the people that he was in charge of. He wasn't just there to turn a profit. Obviously that's the goal of these companies he was working for, but he was invested in the lives of the people who were in his employ, and that's always refreshing to see. In any large company, that the people behind the scenes, actually, it's not just there to keep us in the black. We know that there are people here working, they have lives, and if they're doing well, then we're doing well. He got his first taste for programming in high school, but he says it's the friend who sat next to him that he passed the calculator back and forth with, who he credits as being his very first customer. He said, as human beings, unless we have someone to compliment our work and enjoy what we've created, we're not apt to go out on a limb. And that desire to create things that people enjoy and brings them happiness is something that Iwata would continue doing to larger and larger effect throughout his career. So it started with just simple little games using ASCII characters on this calculator, and eventually he would go on to do the things that he would do.
It's impressive that we continue to do this podcast because, like Iwata says, like if nobody's actually watching to enjoy your work or has anything nice to say about it, then why do you even do it? And,
exactly.
We've done this for 219 episodes so far, and I'm still trying to figure out the positives.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly not these deep dives, I'll tell you that much.
Thanks, Bobby. So in his first year of college, he spent all of his savings, the money that he had been given, and even took out a loan to buy his first computer. It was a Commodore PET, P-E-T, purchased from the Seibu department store in Ikebukuro. He'd go there and with the programs that he was making to share them with others. So there were people who would go to these stores who couldn't afford their own computers and just write their own programs because they wanted to learn program, they wanted to make software, but computers at this time were exorbitantly expensive. Not everyone could afford it.
Yeah, I guess it would have been like the closest thing to an internet cafe these days, but much nerdier and for people who
yes,
yeah, and no coffee.
The people who he shared those programs with and made connections with would turn out to be very consequential in his life because they, along with Iwata, would go on to form HAL Laboratory. The manager of the store, who Iwata and his other programming pals befriended, offered Iwata a part-time job working as a programmer. He accepted. He worked at HAL throughout college. He graduated on time, but admits he was not a model student, mostly because he was having too much fun working at HAL. He says, my college coursework helped me understand the basics of computing. I'm glad I went, but most of the work I did later on was a continuation of the things I taught myself. So, kind of a bit of a humble brag, I would say. I think I learned it. Yeah, absolutely. So after you
breakfast with Chase, it doesn't take a lot to brag about what you do.
It's true.
So after he graduates, he moves into a full-time position, and being at such a small company, he was able to be involved in very important decisions for the company, despite how young he was. And he says in the book, this was an ideal opportunity since I enjoyed what I was doing so much that it didn't feel like work. So there's no one working above him on any matters of development. So that made him the point person for all that stuff. All dev matters were handled by him, and that led to yet another in a series of chance encounters that would eventually lead him to where he would end up. So when the Famicom came out, it was way more affordable than a PC, and it was clearly the best choice as a platform to make games on. So someone who was investing in HAL had a connection at Nintendo, and Iwata was able to use that connection to set up a meeting with Nintendo. He said, I was in my early 20s, dressed in a suit I clearly wasn't used to wearing. I showed up out of nowhere, just some newbie, and said, please let us work on something. I felt a little bold asking for work like that, but in retrospect, I realized they were making themselves vulnerable too. And that paid off. HAL was enlisted to develop software for the Famicom, and Iwata made games like Golf and Pinball. The games were made on commission, so they sold lots of copies, but that had no effect on the money that HAL brought in. But still, he was just thrilled that there were people all around the world who were playing a game that he had made.
Have you played that golf game?
I feel like I have at one point.
I have not played NES Golf. I've only played Game Boy Golf, which I think is based on the same stuff. And I think he had a hand in Game Boy Golf as well, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, so he said, these creations that once upon a time had only been known to the friends seated next to me had reached people all over the world. What could be cooler than that? So over 10 years, HAL grew from a small shop of five employees up to 90. Iwata was responsible for all development. Before too long, he was manager, and eventually he was director of development. At 33, he became president of HAL at the insistence of then president of Nintendo, Hiroshi Yamauchi. So as that happened, HAL became a second-party partner to Nintendo. This was also happened to be when HAL had a lot of debt that they had built up, 1.5 billion yen's worth.
And that was before Iwata became president. Like
Correct.
he was like,
stepped
"Oh,
in.
hey, congrats on being president! By the way,
Here's all this debt."
you weren't aware."
Yeah, so things weren't great. And this was also at the time when he started doing his interviews, because things weren't looking great for the company, and he used these interviews as a way to gauge how people were feeling, because obviously it has to be stressful working in a company that is potentially going to go under.
But also to get a full picture of
Yes,
what was going on, like
exactly.
not like knowing everybody from the top brass down to the guy who makes copies or something like that. All those people have a hand in making the company run more efficiently, and it's to what Johnny said earlier about him caring so much about the happiness of the workers, and you get better work out of people when they are comfortable and happy with their job. So it's an interesting approach. I've worked at a few businesses, office job kind of stuff in the advertising industry, and we maybe have yearly check-ins on some of that stuff, and mostly it's about your own job performance, not about
how are you doing as a person.
Or not even that, but how do you think the company's doing? How do you I just wrote I actually just wrote a peer review for somebody else, but like that is again that's about another person and not how I feel like the company's going, how I feel like the way we do things, and if there was a potentially more efficient way of doing things. I guess they just hope that they hope that you speak up about some of that stuff, and they don't ask you that stuff themselves. And I think that was something that really stuck with me with the book of when he was at HAL and even when he was at Nintendo, although Nintendo has quite a few more employees than HAL. I think he would try to continue that practice of continuing to hold meetings and talk to people as much as he could.
Yeah.
I think sorry to jump in here, Johnny, but if you look at the culture that Nintendo has, like a lot of people are they're still very secretive. Like I know we talked about it. I think it was last year, maybe longer, when some of those leaks came out, specifically around some of the assets for Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and like how crazy it was to see that level of detail from Nintendo. But you don't keep that level of detail secret in this day and age without like a deep respect for the culture of the company. And even though he's been gone now, what, 6-7 years?
6 years, yeah.
Yeah, I think that what he brought into it, I mean, this is going on, obviously. There's a lot of people beyond him that made it, but what he did to Chase's point on investing in the employees to make sure that they felt like they had a say, and like this social ownership of the company when it came to a community aspect. Like, I think they did a really nice job. And I mean, you hear about it all the time. Like his legacy in that sense is still very much present in Nintendo. Like as much as we want to be able to like peek through the curtains and see like these Schreier-esque reports that come out, like it's still nice to know that there's a lot of pride and responsibility for making that environment what it is.
Yeah, when the Wii U wasn't doing well, he cut his salary in half, and the other executives took like 10 to 20% pay cuts so that no one would have to be laid off from Nintendo. And that just speaks how often you hear about something like that happening. Activision made more money than they had ever, and they laid off hundreds of people. So yeah, he says, simply put, I became president because we had no other option. Whether I was for it or against it didn't matter. When I'm convinced that I'm the best person for the job, I step up to the plate. So also a man of conviction. Like he felt like he was ready for this. He was made to do this job. So he went to work, and he said he felt lucky to have the backing and the trust of his staff, even if they're and not so much in the company anymore. But still, he began the process of paying off the debts that the company owed. They took out new debt to help keep afloat. But after 6 years and paying 250 million yen annually, the young president was able to get HAL out of debt. The next thing I have here is the interviews that he started with people. So one of the quotes I wrote down, he says, this stems from his own ideal company to work for. As he put it, ask me what sort of company I would want to work for, and I would say a place where my boss understands me, or a place where my boss cares about my quality of life. So he worked hard to be the type of boss that he would want to have, taking time to get to know his employees and see how they were doing. No two interviews had the same question, save for the first one. Are you happy doing what you're doing? And he would talk to them until they reached some sort of relief. There are no limits on how long you'd be able to bend his ear. And it was just another thing that helped solidify trust in him. And for him, for Iwata, it was a valuable lesson in management. So yeah, it would be tempting for anyone in that position to consider running away. But as he put it, running away would mean a lifetime of regret. And how could I run away after everything my friends and I had been through? He also shares his gratitude for his wife, who never questioned his decision to take on such a challenging and potentially doomed role. I mean, I know that.
I know how that goes. Sarah and I have long talks about this show and taking on a doomed role here.
Think of what you could be doing that would be so much more fulfilling and better for our family.
I know. Obviously, business culture is very different in some place like Japan. And I don't know if you're the leader of a company that fails, I'm not sure if that reflects on you differently over there than it would if you were, an executive in America and you oversaw a company that went under.
And somebody before.
There you go.
I don't want to I don't think is tokenize the word. I don't want to make Japan seem like more about this place of honor. No. It really is.
I have no clue.
Right. But I do culture. I do think there is, from the experience that I've seen, there is more taking responsibility from Japanese businessmen than there would be in America. I think in America, it's really easy to pass the blame onto a number of different factors, and in Japan, I think it's much more ingrained that if you're leading the ship, it's your fault. Regardless of where the actual fault came, it's your fault for not seeing that fault.
Right.
Yeah. Definitely. And then another thing that I thought was really interesting is during development cycle, for games, different teams are busy at different times within this, the development life cycle. And Iwata would make it a point of helping out whichever team was busiest at that time. So during the height of the Super Famicom, Super Nintendo, and as Iwata put it, the company got a lucky break and had some life breathed back into it with the release of Kirby's Dream Land. What was supposed to be a Game Boy game under the name Twinkle Popo, I think that we've talked about that before at some point, changed to the game that we know today after comments from none other than Miyamoto. He said this. He just said this game needs more attention. So Miyamoto told him that, and the release was put off. What we would get is Kirby's Dream Land. But something I learned was that the marketing and everything for this game was already in motion, and it caused kind of a small scandal that how canceled or delayed this game and then put it out later. But from the perspective of the folks in sales, it was a mortal blow to our reputation, he says in the book. However, Kirby's Dream Land would go on to sell over 5 million copies, over 200 times the initial number of orders. And so from there, in 2000,
that game's not even that good.
Yeah.
No. They didn't even figure out the Kirby can suck up things to get their powers thing yet. That game is all about just floating and jumping and it's fine.
Blowing out puffs of air.
He wasn't even pink yet.
He was flesh.
Right. Oh God. Oh.
He was just a flesh blob.
So in 2000, he is hired by Nintendo after working very closely with them, throughout basically his entire tenure at HAL, and he's made its head of corporate planning division and took a seat on the board of directors. In 2002, he was named president, and he was the only person not a member by blood or marriage of the Yamauchi family to lead Nintendo. He was the first person not related to them at all. But that's how much faith Yamauchi had in him to lead Nintendo, and he took them to heights that they hadn't seen since what? The original Nintendo?
I would
Probably,
say
yeah.
Super Nintendo?
Yeah, Super Nintendo was pretty popular.
Yeah.
But, like,
But you were talking about how Yamauchi had respect for him and thought he would do the best job, and I think that was everybody. Like there are some quotes from Miyamoto in there where it was like, well, hey, I'm the one who made fucking Mario. I mean, he didn't. Sorry, when I say quotes, this is not the quote. This is me. This is me paraphrasing a quote in the book. And he's like, "Hey, I made fucking Mario. You'd think that it might be me, but
fucking
Mario,
older, fleshy Kirby."
Yeah,
and even though like Miyamoto made sense for the job and probably could have done the job, there was definitely like I don't know the exact quote, but the phrase is something like, once I saw him, like, no, he's the one who could do the job. I had total confidence that he was the right guy for the job, and I was happy being in his, or he was happy being in his position.
So he obviously would be there when the Wii was developed, and the DS, and the 3DS, and the Wii U, and I'm sure that he had his hands in the development of the Switch, but unfortunately he would pass away before it was released. But yeah, he was a really interesting guy, and I had a few little blurbs that stuck out to me through various chapters in the book, and one of those was shocking people in a good way. Which sounds strange at first, but then the more I think about it, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, that's kind of Nintendo's thing. Like they're good at doing that, like they're good at catching you off guard, and it turns out a lot of times when they do that, it's really amazing. Like,
I can't remember if it was said in the book exactly, but it's that idea of like that blue ocean style of business where you were looking for the place that nobody has gone before,
right?
And that is definitely something Nintendo has stuck with, especially in Iwata's time, where we had something like the Wii that was a completely different style of console. We had the DS. I think there's some really good stories about the DS in this book, and how it
we're going to release a console with 2 screens and has a touch panel.
It's also interesting too, to your point, Chase, though, like not only are they going to these unknown territories, but for a company that for the three of us, specifically here for the casual hour, I'm going to speak for us, Nintendo is kind of where we cut our teeth with all this. And I think that we still to this day, like this show, the three of us together would not exist without the things that Nintendo instilled in us, decades ago. And I think that nostalgia can only take you so far. And we've seen that happen where this past year we've talked about games that, like, I know, I'm going to use Stubbs Zombie just as an example. Like that game I've talked about as something I greatly enjoyed decades ago, but playing it again today, like, it doesn't hold up, where I can still fire up something from my childhood, from Nintendo that they've touched, and it still has that magic, and they've built off of that. And like even today, like the stuff that Nintendo's putting out on the Switch, first party stuff that they're putting out, like that still at its core follows a very specific set of rules. It still holds up, and it still is in a way going to areas that have been uncharted in 2021 just the same. And I think there's something to be said about that. And like I'll forever respect Nintendo for the level of care and control they put into their situations here.
And that's coming from known Switch hater Bobby Pease. So
I
that's
hate Switch.
He does. He just
I don't hate it. I'm just better than it. Okay.
Yeah.
The Switch has confidence that you were the right man for the job.
Another thing I thought was interesting was how he related his programming skills and translated that into management. Specifically, when something isn't working in a program, it's not the computer's fault that it's not working, it's the programmer's fault. And so something that
that's a nice way of saying tried to get good.
Yeah. So he liked to think if there was a miscommunication or if something isn't working, like in a conversation with someone, he would always look and think, okay, what am I not doing here to like effectively communicate what I'm doing instead of blaming it on the other person, which I think ties back into his like being the boss that he wishes he could have. See what Miyamoto sees over your shoulder. I thought, I don't know if I've read this story before, but basically, Miyamoto will just, when he's working on something, he'll just grab a random employee at Nintendo, and then like someone from the kitchen or like completely unrelated to
like
games
somebody
development.
from the accounting department is like, hey, just come here and
play this.
Do this, yeah.
And then he just watches over their shoulder to see what they do with the game. I think that's a really
how bad they are. You suck at this.
Yeah, God, you're garbage. But no, that's like
and other companies do that. I think they do it in a more formal way where they'll bring in play testers or they'll bring in focus group people to take a look at a game. But there is something to that kind of auteur style approach of I'm just going to grab this one person and I'm going to glean all I need to know out of this. It is certainly taking small sample sizes, but there's definitely stuff you can glean out of that too.
For sure. Chase, what else stood out in the book to you?
One of the things, I mean, it's more of a Miyamoto thing than it is a Iwata thing. It's that quote about I misquote it because I don't know if I've heard it a different way or if I developed it this way myself. I can't remember, but the idea of a good idea being able to solve multiple problems.
Yeah.
And I think the way I've always heard it or said it is like a good idea solves one problem, a great idea solves multiple problems at the same time, which is not exactly what the quote was, but functionally it's the same thing. And even Miyamoto in his part in the book goes like, yeah, I mean, I guess I'm credited with saying it. I don't remember saying it, and I know Iwata
he swears
was the one. Yeah, like he's the one who preaches it like the gospel, and that is always something that I've thought about, especially in my job. It's like I'm a copywriter at an advertising agency, and will this word choice make multiple things work? Is that able to connect with a customer and talk about the product better and do this other thing? That is always something that's kind of stuck with me, and it's interesting that Iwata is kind of that sponge where he remembers things. I don't think they said he had a photographic memory or something like that, but he did have a very good memory, and so he's able to remember those nuggets of knowledge. And also he just wanted to better people all the time, and himself included. He would read a lot of books. I know that was something that got talked about in the book, where he would just be this avid reader, especially of things that he didn't know. And when he first became a company president, it was business books, because he just needed to know more about business and felt like reading about it was the fastest way for him to get that. And he would then, if he found a particular book or a particular part of a particular book interesting, he would share that book with other people or even make reading lists for other executives or other people in the company. Like, hey, if you want to learn something that I just learned and thought was really interesting and cool and maybe a direction that we
check this book
take
out.
Our company.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like that, I thought that stuff was really
cool. Or teaching himself English, like, to give a speech in English.
Right.
He would then go on to give numerous speeches in English. I think the one that I quoted at the beginning, but the one that always kind of sticks with me is, in my mind, I'm a programmer. On my business card, I'm a corporate executive. My heart, I'm a gamer. And I think he just strove to create things that were good. This last line in the Iwata chapter of this, just because they would have lunch together every Monday, and
Iwata
and Miyamoto, and Iwata would often come to him the following week and say, "Hey, I think I figured out your problem." And Miyamoto says, when I'm eating lunch, he isn't there to say, "I think I figured out your problem." which leaves me feeling stuck sometimes. I really miss him. So that kind of broke my heart to read that. But I don't know. It was really nice. Like, I think these last two chapters, being written specifically for this book, maybe had the most impact. Whereas everything else, like Chase said, it was a collection of various blog entries and snippets from Ask Iwata's.
And I think part of it also, when I'm reading the book, it was edited and put together by the Hobonichi company, which is Itoi's company.
Yeah.
Because they do a lot more than just make 3 mother games and call it a day. They do a lot of things. But I think partially because they had so much firsthand experience, because it's their company, there is a lot of lip service paid to how Iwata got introduced to Itoi through Yamauchi. I guess Yamauchi had been trying to get these two together for a long time. I mean, they can do interesting things. And then when Earthbound was in development, they'd already made Mother 1, which hadn't come out to America, but they were working on Earthbound, and it was just a mess. Like, they just weren't going to get it done, and they were having a lot of development problems. And Itoi called up Iwata. They got together. Iwata looked through everything they had, and the quote was something like, if we can do this 2 ways, and that was, I think that's what Itoi really appreciated, is that he gave him the option. He didn't just say this is how it has to be, but he gave him the option. We can use what's here, and we can get this thing done in, what was it, 2 years? 2 years. Or we can start from scratch, and I think we can get this done in half a year.
Yep. And it shipped a year later.
And half a year later, I think they nailed it, didn't they?
I think like the time when the game came out, it was a year after that point.
Gotcha.
Also, Pokemon Gold and Silver.
That one's not in the book. That was getting back to that point of, like, they talk a lot about Earthbound here, and that great story of how he came in and helped and fix everything. And also in there, it wasn't that he just came in himself and did all this, because the other part of that story is he actually, despite scrapping a lot of what they had and starting from scratch, he didn't just make it all himself. He included that full team in there.
Yep.
And so it wasn't a case of all your work was garbage, I'm going to do it myself. It was really a collaborative thing. But yes, like, there's so much Earthbound stuff in here. And my favorite story is the one Johnny's telling about Gold and Silver. Why don't you keep going on that?
Yeah. So the only reason that we have Kanto, right? Kanto? Yes. Okay. So the only reason Kanto is in that game is because Iwata did some programming wizardry and found a way to cram that map in there on that
I think they were struggling with the game size to begin with, even with the second the initial Johto region. And when he came in, he was able to compress things enough.
Crazy mechanics, there's your problem.
Just they added on top of like a whole new map system. You've got how many Pokemon they added in on Gen 2?
100.
Yeah, I mean, like that's
new Pokemon.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, that's got to be a feat in itself. Like at that point in time, bringing that stuff in there.
Yeah, and that was
on the Game Boy for sure.
And that was such a pleasant surprise to get to the end of that game and be like, hey, by the way, you get to go here and you can get all 8 of these badges.
We haven't really gotten that again, have we? I mean,
no.
There's certainly been post-game stuff, but it's not like, hey, here's the whole other
region from the last game.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Him and not Miyazaki. Oh my god.
Miyamoto?
No, Smash Brothers.
Oh, Sakurai.
Masahiro. He and Sakurai worked on Smash Brothers. It was like the Postal Service, the video game, because they would Sakurai would send designs and stuff, and then Iwata would add in the code. And it was like, they thought it was really fun. And then obviously, like, later on, they'd add in all the Nintendo characters, but it started out just being these real simple poly models that they just thought was fun to use these items and beat each other.
And this part is in the book, but I know, was it Smash Brothers Ultimate or was it Brawl? I can't remember which one it was. But Iwata announced it on stage or something at an event. I think it might have been at E3.
Oh yeah,
Sakurai later was like,
Brawl.
I didn't know they were going to announce that. I didn't know I was working on it, but apparently I am. But I think some of that might have been done in jest because those two were also so close and good friends and worked together. So he respected Iwata to know, like, okay, if you need me to make another one of these, I'll make another one of these. I will make it my life's work to bring nothing but Smash Brothers to you people.
And it's greatly appreciated, Mr. Sakurai.
Yes, absolutely. But also put Isaac in the game.
Pokemon Stadium wouldn't exist if it wasn't for this man. Because what was it, Chase? Was it not the source code? It was some.
I don't remember on Stadium.
Yeah, but like Pokemon Stadium wouldn't exist without Iwata. He also worked on the original Pokemon Snap.
Yeah, the Pokemon Snap stories were interesting. I guess part of that was just me playing the new Pokemon Snap while also reading this book. But I didn't know that story, that the Pokemon Snap originally was just a photography game and didn't have anything to do with Pokemon or any Nintendo stuff. And he and Miyamoto were having a conversation about the game, about how it was going, and Iwata said, like, what people like taking photos, what people would like taking photos of is Pokemon, after they've been thinking about this for a long, long time. And that was just the perfect thing.
They were right.
How many times do you think that Iwata had to stop what he was doing, wait for Miyamoto to measure something? like they're like dead set, like talking about something, hang on a second, I gotta go measure this door frame. I think it's 6 feet. Let me double check.
I bet those would be, if I understood Japanese, I bet those would be some very interesting conversations to be a fly on the wall for. Just hearing these guys talk through their creative process, even as one is a president of a company and certainly trying to think of more things than just creative pursuits. But like the corporate executive on the business card quote, he was such a well-rounded person when it came to all these aspects, of business, of creative pursuits, of the more hardcore programming stuff. And I think that's why he was such an effective leader, is because he really did, if you want a boss that understands you, he's a boss who understood multiple aspects of game development, because he'd made games on his own before, because he'd run a game company before, because now he's running a big publishing company like Nintendo. That is, he was just able to understand people on a lot of different levels.
Yep.
And I think, sorry,
go ahead, Bobby.
There's a quote that I think about, like hearing you talk about it, but like also just knowing what I know about him. That I've always liked this quote a whole lot, and I think it talks a lot about his style of leadership, especially. But it's, if you want to build a ship, don't drum up the men together wood, divide the work, and give orders, instead teaching the yearn for the vast and endless sea. And I think that he has done an amazing job of saying, like, hey, here's where we want to go, right? This is the destination for it, rather than especially look, I don't know everything about Nintendo, I don't know everything about the industry I'm about to reference. But I think the three of us have been around enough stories in the last several years about culture and workplaces that aren't great. I mean, you mentioned Activision having bonuses and then letting people go within the same breath. But I think that when you look at the values aspect of it, like his leadership style, he made people want to chase these dreams with him, even if they were their original ideas. And I think he attracted that talent. And it's just like that sort of leadership is a very rare form of leadership. It's very genuine, and it's just really cool to hear. Very, very cool stuff.
It's a really cool thing. I like that quote because of what that represents. Because if you give everybody a goal, you don't have to be lording over them and micromanaging them, because they will naturally, want to do things to contribute to that goal. Yes. And they'll end up, being inspired to do things on their own, and maybe do something that you wouldn't think of that could be better.
Right.
I like that quote a lot. And then the other quote that I think it might get misused a little bit, and they even talk a little bit about its misuse in the book. But he has a quote of programmers never say no.
Yep.
And it sounds like it can be construed into something like, well, if you just have to do whatever anybody tells you. You literally can't say no. If you take it literally like that, it sounds like a bad quote. But I think it's more about not dismissing an idea out of hand.
Yeah.
It is being willing to accept an idea and not necessarily doing it just as asked, but to make it a conversation. To not just, we have similar
say,
things.
no, we can't do this thing. It's impossible.
Right. I mean, we have similar things when we do brainstorms in my company of, there are no bad ideas, and that's also false. There are definitely bad ideas, but there are bad ideas that trigger something in somebody's mind to get to a good idea.
Yeah. It's worth having the conversation.
Right.
An example he gives is
what was the example?
He told them, like, hey, the Wii needs to be the same size as 3 DVD cases stacked on top of each other.
Right.
And he's like, I don't know if they can do this, but I'm going to tell them that it needs to be this way. And they did it. They made that work. And also, and by the way, it needs to not have the fan running whenever the system is powered off, because I don't want people to hear it whenever it's not being used. Yeah. And
do you think that's their biggest achievement? Hardware-wise? Like thinking about like the nuts and bolts that went into something like out of all their, do you think this was one of the bigger ones?
As far as like bringing video games to the masses, to the general population, I think the Wii is about as close as anything has come in our lifetime. I mean, I don't know. The NES kind of single-handedly resuscitated what was what an industry that people thought was just gone, was a phase, it's dead.
I'm saying like more engineering feat, like what you're saying, like needs to be this tall, out of what Nintendo's put out, like the Switch is pretty impressive.
Are you forgetting about the Virtual Boy?
That they can,
the Virtual Boy, we joke, but it was impressive at the time.
This is one of a kind thing.
Here's a different type of technology. You haven't seen this before. It's pushing what games can be. Yes, it was a miss. It didn't quite work out. It did have a lot of issues with it. It's kind of a handheld thing, but you couldn't play it really handheld. You couldn't take it with you on the go because it needed to be set up on a table. But the technology itself worked. Burned your eyes out, but it worked.
Bobby, the Game Boy, having a system like that you can take with you wherever you go, and now we have the Switch, being the latest example of their history of trying to make their things more accessible. The
game is pretty impressive in my opinion.
When I had GBA and I was able to play Super Nintendo games on this tiny little thing.
See, I'd probably say DS. If you were asking me a question like that, and I think it more comes from the expectations versus reality. Like the expectations when we saw that, when we heard the name, when we looked at it, I'm like, what the hell is this?
What is this? Wow, two screens?
How are people going to play a game with two screens? You can only look at one screen at a time. This is stupid. And the way it was engineered, the way that they made games for it, the implementation of all those things, I think really did lead to a big success. Well, obviously it led to a big success for Nintendo. That was one of their best-selling consoles. We talk about how the Wii broke into the mainstream, but you think about games like Nintendogs, you think about Brain Training or Brain Age, you think about a lot of the DS games that we saw fucking Beyonce in a commercial for, I think it was Nintendogs.
Yeah, Brain Age, another Iwata idea.
We saw Phoebe. We saw one of the Friends. We saw one of the Lisa Kudrow in commercials for the DS. Like that did break into the mainstream in a way that a lot of other systems, especially handheld systems, just couldn't do.
Yeah. So yeah, that is Iwata. That was all about the book Ask Iwata. If you are interested at all in learning about this guy,
it's available at your local library.
Yeah.
You know, a library.
It's a pretty good book. I read it in 2 sessions. It is relatively short.
It's a short, easy read, but it's full of interesting.
Like 150 pages, like nothing too bad at all. And some of those pages, there are sections that are like bullet pointed things of just like, here are little nuggets of wisdom from Iwata. And so those are even shorter pages. So it is a really quick read. It's like, I'm not a person who reads a ton of stuff, and it was still a pretty breezy thing for me. So if you're interested, I think it's cool. Also, I think what's really cool, it's going to be hard to show up on here. Yeah, you can see it. The S and the I are slightly lighter red for Saturo Iwata. I think that's cool. That's cool. I just think that's
I like that a lot.
Smart design.
Absolutely.
Well done.
Yeah.
Johnny doesn't have that because he doesn't have his book jacket on.
It's around here somewhere. I can't read books with the jacket on. It drives me crazy.
It's no resale value if you don't have the book jacket.
I'm not reselling it.
Well, Johnny.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Yeah. Let me switch this over here. Try and get this shit all organized for us. Sorry, folks. You're seeing how the sausage was made for a second here.
Oh, that's clean. I like that. I like that look.
There we go.
There we go.
Maybe. All right, almost.
Good enough.
Good enough as we wrap up here. So, Johnny, outside the deep dive, we've got a lot happening here at the show, and I'm really excited about kind of some things that are coming up. You and Chase are going to record a video. We do not have a stream on Friday nights this week. I'm going to be out of town, and these two, I mean, Johnny didn't even tell me about a book, let alone run the stream. So we're going to cancel our Friday night stream this week, and it's probably good because you're going to rest up for Monday, which Casual Monday's kicking off. Chase and I are going to start
it's going to be a hike.
We're going to. It's the Casual Monday, the Banner Saga. We'll begin, and we will be playing for the first time, but at least for me, I think for you too, the entirety of the first installation of that game.
I never finished it. I got a decent way in, but again, I've almost certainly forgotten everything from that because it was like 7-8 years ago at this point.
Absolutely.
It'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it should be a good time. And then we'll be back next week with what you've been playing on Wednesday. And then there's a couple new games that are coming out this weekend that we're all very excited for.
Yes.
Subnautica Below Zero and the Mass Effect Legendary Collection. Chase curls his lip up at Subnautica Below Zero.
No, I'm curling my lip at everything. Like I don't think it's a very exciting weekend. You didn't even mention the good game coming out this Friday.
I mentioned two very good ones.
Yeah, what
am I mentioning?
Come on,
Famicom Detective Club!
Oh, God.
I don't think I'm going to play that day one, but I am very interested in seeing what those games are both about.
So we have those games coming out. I don't know what next Friday will look like. We could all three play something. Next week we're going to be hopefully recording a quick look with a couple friends of the show for that new game, Hood Outlaws. We've got a couple people lined up to join all of us as we record what that new PvP game looks like. And maybe we'll play some Destiny next Friday. I know there's a new season going on. We all have that game. That is an old favorite. So you might see us playing a little bit of that. But beyond all those things, if you want to find out what's going on in between now and then, at Casual Hour across all socials, the place to be. We put some clips up on TikTok. You can find out most of our schedule stuff on Twitch and or Twitter. But if you're listening to this, that means you found us online where podcasts are happening. Every Friday we post our episodes. Every Wednesday night we record them live. I will put the links up now and in our show notes as well, if you want to see them there. And outside of that stuff for the show, Chase, the game on the go, what do you got going on?
Gamers on the Go is still working on. I've said this for weeks, and it's still true. Bobby and I are still playing through a game that we'll talk about eventually for Gamers on the Go once that gets finished. And then, as you can see in our chat stream here, I also have a YouTube link there. You can go and watch me play Super Robot Wars X Part 5, just released as we were speaking on this podcast. So if you're listening to this, it's out. You can go watch that. Bobby joins me. Oh, it's probably going to be a couple weeks until Bobby's episode comes on. But Bobby joined me for an episode. I hope to get Johnny, who is now a huge fan of mechs and robots, to come on the show at some point. Because it's more fun to play in front of somebody than just kind of play by yourself. Absolutely. But yeah, that's been a lot of fun. Really, really cool to do that. Those new episodes, one comes out as we record here on Wednesdays, and then the other episode will come out on Saturdays at noon.
Absolutely. And Johnny, between reading your book,
yes.
What are you doing outside of your book and the show?
Oh man, so I scanned all those magic cards.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's keep it going.
1,401 cards.
It's a lot of cards.
Valued at around $200, according to the TCG Player app that I used.
For the whole thing? For everything? Okay. $200. You paid how much for this lot of cards?
$9 American is what I paid for that.
Pretty good deal.
I have no clue what I'm gonna do with these cards. I could maybe play with them. I could build some decks, maybe. And Jude and I did play Magic together for the first time the other night, and I think he had fun. I was basically playing for the two of us, and also trying to remember how to play this game because it's been so fucking long since I've
It's complicated, especially with like what activates on what parts of the turn order. Mm-hmm. That can be tough stuff to remember.
Yeah, so
I've got some decks. I'd be happy to run around at some point. And
I'd like to have you two guys over, play some Pokemon, play some Magic.
I've been getting into not getting into. I've been dragged back into the Pokemon cards. One of my friends, good friend of the show, Pierce Corshane, hit me up and asked me if I had any of my old base set Pokemon cards, and I ended up having some, and apparently some of those are a little expensive these days.
Well, Chase is saying he's retiring early.
Oh yeah.
He's gonna join Elon Musk on a super yacht.
Yeah. Gonna trade in all my Pokemon cards for Dogecoin. Seems like a really great investment these days.
Wise investment.
But yeah, I'm not shocked. It's just another commodity for people to buy and sell. But I'm pretty surprised at the prices that some of those original.
Hey, you can thank your friend Jake Paul for that.
Yeah,
no,
certainly.
And
actually, well, when all of us got into Pokemon cards, when Johnny was just introduced to Pokemon cards, I remember we wanted to do like a meetup where we played. This was pre-pandemic, so we just met up and played some Pokemon cards, and we wanted to grab like a big booster box and open a bunch of stuff. And I looked at a booster box of what's the base set? Because the base set's the one I know. Right. I know all these cards. And I'm like, oh fuck, the booster box is so expensive.
Yeah.
Who knows? It might have that first edition holographic Charizard in it, and then you'd be, rich.
Yeah.
Rich.
Maybe.
That was a crazy.
So you're playing Magic Gathering, son. I'm sure that is as exhausting as it is for me to hear for you. What else?
And I'm playing Super Robot Wars, which is also exhausting for Bobby. Bobby's just tired. He's just so tired these days.
We've been playing some Pokemon too. We played that together.
Finally on Minecraft.
You might be able to see them on camera. I built those Scout Trooper and Darth Vader Lego guys. Yeah, things are going well.
Okay. Well, that is going to conclude our deep dive this week here, Casual Hour. If you enjoy what we're doing, give us a follow where we are at. Like, subscribe, ring the bell, help Johnny be a more patient father, whatever you can do.
It's too late for that.
We would appreciate it. Go watch some of those Super Robot videos, and while you're at it, subscribe to Chase and our channel on YouTube. New clip going up tomorrow morning by the time you listen to this, went up yesterday. But we'll have a quick up, and should be a good time. So we'll be back on Monday night with the first Casual Monday, the Banner Saga. Take care, everybody.
See ya.